Hi, I'm Dave Henning with Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. Today, my guest is Bonnie Hewitt from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I love the Pittsburgh area, been there lots of times. You are so unbreakable. You're an entrepreneur, you're a mom of four. You've overcome some trauma, anxiety, chronic illness. You are going to tell us your story about what happened when things happened to you with the Guillain Barre Syndrome. Time for me to be quiet and say, welcome, Bonnie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to share my story, hoping that it may inspire at least one person from hearing it. In 2011, we'll just start there. I was working from home as an accountant with my two older kiddos at home for the summer. And it was tough. My oldest son is on the spectrum, and I was managing his care. And so autism spectrum, for anyone who isn't familiar. I was managing his care, and he was having a particularly difficult time that summer. And working, putting in like 11 hours just to get 6 hours of work done with two kids running around. So it was interesting. I wasn't really taking care of myself the way I should have been. Taking in a lot of caffeine just to get through my day, honestly. And at one point, one afternoon in late August, I started having chest pains, and I thought I was having allergic reaction to antibiotic because I'm allergic to multiple of those. Took some Benadryl, took some Motrin, and was waiting for my son's therapist to show up. I was like, oh, I'll see how I feel in an hour. Ended up trying to drive myself to the emergency room with the kids in the car and had to pull over. And it basically mimicked a drug overdose. In fact, when the paramedics showed up, they thought I had overdosed on drugs and were doing all kinds of not so nice things. And I could hear in everything that was going on and feel, but I had no means of responding. Like I couldn't talk, I couldn't open my eyes, I couldn't move. So I was paralyzed. And spent a week in the hospital with them trying to figure out what was going on. And then once they did and diagnosed the Guillain Barre, they did some other things. And I spent another week and a half in rehab because what it did to my body was basically like a stroke. Like I had to learn how to use my body again, fine motor skills, typing, talking, walking, all of those things. So yeah, that was the beginning. I call it the first part of my healing journey. Honestly, when I came home, I was just kind of wanted life to be, as usual, tried to go back to work, and quickly found out that my cognitive function was severely impaired. I couldn't retain information, and everything I had learned up to that point, I was okay with, but I wasn't able to learn anything new. And my memory, my short-term memory was basically like shot at that point. So yeah, it was a real struggle. Those first few months were pretty intense. They told me I was going to get better. And then 6 months later, they said, you're not going to get better. And we don't know what's wrong with you. And it was a lot of chaos, to say the least. So fast forward a little bit, my husband and I had been separated. We ended up reconciling right around the time I got sick, and had another child, a surprise child, in 2013. And honestly, he was probably my saving grace because, as I mentioned earlier, with the doctors telling me I wasn't going to get better, I really had no motivation. Like I kind of went back and forth between I'm not going to listen to you and, kind of in denial, but in a good way. Like I'm not going to listen to you and I'm going to try to do what I can. And back to, okay, this is pointless. I feel like crud. I was in a lot of pain. I was always exhausted, sleeping 16 hours a day. And so when I had him, it was kind of like, can't lay around. I'm not going to lay around for my pregnancy. I need to be as healthy as I can. There's not a whole lot of laying around when you have a newborn baby. And then in 2016, we had yet another very, very surprise baby. After I had multiple surgeries and my husband had surgery, and I still managed to get pregnant. And my little miracle Sebastian was born. And right shortly after that was when I started Posh Notions. We were broke. Fourth child on the way. I was looking for a way, to make money to kind of supplement what my husband was doing. So yeah, that kind of leads into, my entrepreneurial journey, I guess you could say.
I'm glad you
So,
shared that about your son with autism. You didn't have any way of knowing this, but my son, Jeffrey, was born when I was attending graduate school in Kansas City years ago, and he was born premature and had a lot of issues and contracted spinal meningitis while he was in the children's incubator hospital area. And anyway, the doctors couldn't tell us for over a year what was wrong with him. And finally, United Cerebral Palsy came along and said, he has cerebral palsy. So I've been very passionate about special needs kids and disabled kids. I'm on the board of directors right now in a organization called Emmaus in Ministries in San Jose, California, and I work with another organization called Young Life Capernaum, which is all about special needs high school kids, and the one I'm in now is for special needs adults, and just trying to be an encouragement and help those like ourselves that have been through it, been there, done that, and know all the challenges, the pain and the joy of all these things that we face. But there's something about pain. Wouldn't you agree that it can really change your life? And you've got to choose which way it's going to change your life. If you're going to be discouraged and disillusioned forever, or whether you step up to the plate, like it sounds like you really took a strong step forward, I think, and starting your Posh Notions as well as changing your life around. So how has this mindset played into your journey, Bonnie?
So, wow. So be honest with you, so I had a lot of mental health, let's call them issues. I know that's maybe not the PC word, but mental health history starting dating way back when I was a kid. I had anxiety. I was considered high strung. I was considered, called all of these different things, depression. And so when I got sick with the Guillain Barre, that's why I call it the first part of my healing journey, because it was a smack in the face of all the things that I had been doing that were not good for me. But I spent the first 5 years trying to go back to my old life because I didn't know any. I said, I don't know any better. I didn't know any other way. I hadn't ever been really introduced to motivational speakers and inspirational speakers or any of that. But in 2017, after an encounter with my psychiatrist I'd been seeing for 15 years, and going in there and saying, I'm having this problem, I'm angry, I'm anxious, I'm this and that. And he said, oh, well, this one particular day, he tells me, well, it could be the one medication you're on. And I'm like, I've been taking that for 15 years. I've been telling you the same thing for 15 years. And you've just been bouncing me and adding. I was on over a dozen meds. And that day I decided I was done. I was quitting all the meds and I wasn't going back to see him ever again. And that for me was the very first step in my changing my mindset, was taking control and accountability for my own healing. I don't think I really realized it at the time. I think at that time I just felt like he had lost all my trust. And I kind of looked at it as I needed to depend on myself. But right after I made that decision, it's funny, the universe kind of started delivering people in incidences and synchronicities. And I wasn't really realizing it at the time. It's kind of in hindsight, when I look back, I was like, wow, it kind of all started to come together. So I met my now best friend. She introduced me to EFT tapping, which for anybody who doesn't know that, it's meridial tapping points, where you kind of release negative feelings that you have and introduce and replace them with affirmation style. And that's a very quick synopsis. You can find EFT tappers all over YouTube. And some other different things that she was doing. And shortly after that, I ran into, on YouTube, I found Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk. These are people I'd never heard of before, and just kind of started binge listening to content. And over the course, so that was 2017, 2018, I actually drove to New Jersey on a whim to go meet Gary Vaynerchuk in person. And it was fabulous and fascinating and scary and so out of my comfort zone. And all the while I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with Posh Notions. Started out as making decals, and then I was asked to make a t-shirt. for a friend of mine. I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but I'll give it a shot. And I'm finding throughout the past few years that the decisions that I make, like kind of spur of the moment, are really my intuition talking to me, and really turn out to be the best decisions that I make. So all of this really kind of fed into my mindset changing incrementally over the course of time. In 2018, I had a really hard time at the end of the year with my rheumatoid arthritis, which is ultimately one of the things they diagnosed me with after the Guillain Barre. And it was my spine. And I ended up taking this medication, and it wrecked my life. And it was, again, another chance for me to say, I got to take control of this. What the doctors are doing isn't working. I've got to figure out a way to, if my mind made me sick, which is what I believe, all the things that I was doing up till getting sick, somehow I can use my mind to fix all of this. And it, again, I don't know if it was a very conscious decision, like, but that's kind of how it played out. So the end of 2018, I got through 2018, 2019, I got to meet Evan Carmichael here. If anybody knows him, check him out. Doesn't know him, check him out on YouTube. He's another motivational, inspirational person. So like I said, the universe was delivering me all these people. Later in 2019, I got to meet David Meltzer, who is now my personal mentor and friend. I love him to death. And that was the third part of my healing journey thus far. It was meeting him. He has helped me shift my mindset more than anyone or anything else. I mean, I know I'm doing the work, but like the perspective that he brings, and he's got a pragmatic and a spiritual way of doing things. And I had the quickest, most best, biggest, whatever you want to call it, transformation after meeting him in such a short amount of time. Because I remember him telling me I was doing this Unbreakable campaign, and I was like, look, I really like your help with this, and I'm trying to grow this business, and I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not getting anywhere. And he, within like 5 minutes of talking to me, he said, you're not going to do anything until you get your health situation figured out. You need to get healthy. And I'm like, well, that wasn't the advice I was looking for. But I knew, again, like another smack in the face was like, that's exactly what I needed to do. And since then, he's helped me with, help with my sleep, and, focusing on my sleep, changing the way I look at things. Perspective is everything. And looking for the love, the light, and the lessons, he calls it, and everything, even when everything's falling down around you and everything's going to crud. Like this past few weeks has been pretty chaotic. And I talked to him last week because I'm in his private group, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like something really big is about to happen, because I've been being tested, and I'm handling everything so gracefully compared to how I would have handled it 3 years ago, which is how I can tell that mindset has completely changed my life. Like there's no other small way to put it. Like it has, because now I look at things, and rather than going, oh, well, that's terrible, it's okay. Everything's solution based now. And what am I supposed to learn from this?
Absolutely. I love that phrase. And a phrase that a friend of mine told me was, who works with disabled kids and adults, my friend Nick, he said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You had quite an experience with David Meltzer on his Bloomberg TV show. And wow, something happened. You won a prize. What's that all about?
Wow. So it's funny. So 2020, when everything shut down, I was making t-shirts for businesses and organizations. So like promotional wear, and lots of other things, but that was the main bulk of what I was doing and that kind of went away. And I had some people come up to me and ask me, could I make custom masks? And I was like, no, I don't know how to sew. Well, a third person asked me, and I was like, this is a sign from the universe. I believe in the law of three. One thing led to another. I learned how to sew. I put up an Etsy shop. I was selling masks. And then fast forward to August, and I'd come up with this idea of doing upcycling. Because all of the materials I've been getting my hands on were secondhand vintage materials, because you couldn't get anything online unless you were like a billionaire. Like stuff was so expensive. It was so hard to get. So I was upcycling materials, and I went to David and I said, do you think I could turn this into a business? And he said, absolutely. In October, he had been working on doing this show called 2 Minute Drill, like on YouTube. I guess it was kind of like testing, and basically people have the opportunity to pitch their business idea. I don't remember what the prizes were for the YouTube version, but they decided to take it to global TV through Bloomberg. And I'm in his private, like I said, I'm in his private coaching group. And at some point in earlier mid-November, I was kind of toying around with the idea of getting on the show, but I was like, I don't really belong there. Imposter syndrome set in hardcore. I was like, these people have like NFL backers and, $1 million, capital raises. I'm like, I don't even know most of the terminology they're using. And at the end of one of the coaching sessions, he said, anybody who hasn't signed up for 2-minute drill to pitch needs to do it. And that means you, Bonnie. And I was like, calls me out. And I'm like, I guess I got to do this. And so anyways, I signed up, and it was funny because I wasn't prepared at all, but the universe was just delivering me. Deliver me my mini pitch that you have to put in the application, delivered my target market to me like in 4 seconds that I have been trying to figure out for 6 months. I'm filling this out. And I'm like, okay, I filled it out. I did what I said I was going to do. And I never thought I was going to get picked. And so a few days later, I got picked, and I'm running around the house screaming, and I'm super excited. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to explain to my friends. Most of my friends aren't entrepreneurs. I'm like, I'm going to be on TV. That's all you need to know. Then I had to write a pitch, and I wrote the pitch, and I still did not feel like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. The day I was pitching, it was virtual. Our power went out, and then our internet wouldn't come back on. And then the whole time I'm recording, my video is pixelated, like I'm delivering my pitch. And I just kept pushing. I'm like, I'm just going to do everything I said I was going to do and keep doing the best that I absolutely can. And at the very least, I can say I gave it my best shot. The whole time in my mind, I'm literally going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Like, how is this going to work? I'm like, at least I said, the very least is I don't want to embarrass myself, and I don't want to embarrass David. And I remember, so it's a lot of standing around, but at the end they tell you, so the winner's face will show up on the screen, and that's all you're going to see. And I'm like, okay, I'm standing there, and I'm like, and all of a sudden I see my face pop out. I'm like, how did I do this? Like the one guy, literally, if you watch my episode, the one guy had NFL backers. I just managed to, I studied, I practiced. I have 400 recordings of me practicing my pitch. I gave my pitch, in the 2-minute time limit, and I won. I just was told, because I asked David after the show, months and months after, I was still grappling with this idea. Like, how did I do this? Like, how did I go from here to up here in a matter of 2 weeks? And he listed out all the things. He's like, you nailed it. You studied, you paid attention, you did, you gave the best pitch. And so it was phenomenal. The whole thing was very surreal. It definitely took a few months, even doing interviews and whatnot. It still wasn't fully sinking in that I had accomplished this thing, to be honest with you.
That's amazing. That is so awesome. We talked a little bit beforehand about how it seems like what you were saying, that people are being drawn together in this whole process. Like we were drawn together for this interview. We really didn't know each other before today, really. I've always said and like to say that I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in divine appointments, and I call it a God thing, and some people call it the universe, and I get that. But we have a purpose, and we're here for a reason, and that's why you're on this interview today. And I am really excited to see what happens next in your life, because this is serious business. There's a lot going on that is unseen, including the devil in the internet going out.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with everything going wrong, like the last minute. I get that for sure, but it's so great to get to know you. And you really, wow. I mean, your journey has been amazing, and the things that you've done and the people you've talked to and met and in this process. And we're still, I don't know if you're like me, but I love what I'm learning from the people that I interview and connecting with. And we're still on this personal education quest, I call it. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree. I think that it's never ending. And I'm really glad that, like, it sounds funny to say I'm glad I got sick, but at the same time, I don't think my life, like I wasn't seeking personal growth or anything like that. I was being a mom and being a housewife and, doing all of those things, which are all very important. I mean, one of the most important jobs we have as moms is to be a mom and raise our kids and make them, kind, compassionate human beings. But I wasn't really pursuing anything else. Like, I didn't imagine anything really big for my life at that point in time. And I think that was one of the biggest blessings, was like, hey, you're not supposed to go this way. Like, you're going the wrong direction. And I was such a hardhead at that point that I needed a very strong wake up call. So I definitely do agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier about Les Brown, who he was kind of like on my bucket list to see, and finally he showed up one year in San Jose, California, and says, I got to go see Les Brown. I can't believe I get to see this guy. What I liked was he happened to also in younger days be a disc jockey in Ohio who interviewed the Jackson Five before anybody knew who they were. But the fact that he was told as a kid by a school teacher, hey, he basically was told you're mentally retarded. And one of his other teachers later on says, never say that again. You are not. And his life shifted. And he became the Les Brown that we know, the author and the speaker that is still inspiring people today. He's still doing some live stuff on YouTube, even during this past year when the crazy stuff has been happening with the shutdown. So all that to say, wow, just almost everybody. I'm trying to remember, somebody famous said what I've always said is, I feel sorry, believe it or not, for people that have not gone through anything. And that seems totally weird to say.
No,
but it's true. Wouldn't you agree? What would you say about that?
I do agree. I think that, like you said, we have divine appointments. I like how you put that. And I think that, I mean, some people, I guess, if they haven't had anything happen, maybe it's their first trip through, through the earth. Maybe it's second. I have a belief where, we're all, spirits with a human body. We're not, we have the chance to come through multiple times if that's what we need to do, and learn lessons over and over again until we've actually fully mastered them. I don't have all the details of that fully worked out, but I just, kind of a general thought. But I think the people who haven't had anything happen, not that I wish any ill will on them, but there's so many chances for growth when you're pushed to your limits, which is why I say, like, about being unbreakable. It's, had I not gone through all of these things, I never would have realized like what kind of strength I actually have, which is also given me the confidence most of the time to conquer other things that I never would have dreamed of doing. I would have never in a million years dreamed of going on TV. Like, the thought of that, I mean, we dream about it as kids, like, oh, it'd be cool to be on a TV show, but not in that capacity. And lots of other things I've done recently that I just never would have had the courage to even think. Like, they wouldn't have probably even crossed my mind had I not gone through all of these other things.
Absolutely. And I want to make it clear that we are talking today about a message of hope and a message of encouragement. That is not to say that we, like you were saying, we don't wish bad things on anybody. And a lot of people have been through some really way worse than the things that either of us have ever experienced. And so we don't mean it in that way, but it's just to say that, like you said, you made it very clear that when life smacks you in the face with some of these things, that it can really be a positive turnout. Let me just say it that way for all of us. So I want to ask you a question. How can I help you today? Do you have a website that I can share with our listeners and viewers on the Fresh Start podcast?
Yeah. So I have, my website is poshnotions.com. Super simple. But I'm also on Etsy, and I'm on social media everywhere under Posh Notions. So if anybody's looking for me, YouTube, Twitter, where everybody likes to hang out, that's where I'm at. So
people can use your services and connect with you and find some things they're looking for.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I have a lot of different things up on my website, and on Etsy. I have them kind of separated, handmade masks and pillows and stuff on our Etsy. And I do, like I said, custom logo gear is what I call it, which is basically promotional wear for businesses and organizations. So you can just find me on my website or find me on social media and DM me. I'm happy to connect with people any way that works for them.
I'm speaking with Bonnie Hewitt from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I have some great Pittsburgh memories. I got to see Terry Bradshaw, who was the famous quarterback for the Steelers, and he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and he's been through some stuff as well. And then my brother took me to a Pittsburgh Penguins hockey game one time, and what a blast. So anyway, thank you, Bonnie, for being with me. And one last question I ask everybody this is, what was your very first job ever as a kid prior to all this other stuff? Anything in particular that pops into your head?
First job would have been door knocking, selling like stationery.
Oh,
I don't know if
really?
you remember those catalogs that they would send, and they would give you envelopes to collect the money, and you would send everything in and could get like stickers and stationery and what. Yeah, that I did that before I was started babysitting. So I have to say that was probably my first job.
That is so funny because mine was, I think I might have been 10 or 12 years old. I was selling flower seeds door to door. And like you were saying, you get this catalog. They didn't pay you anything. They gave you this catalog to get a camera or a magnet.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I remember that now because I'm like, I don't remember getting any money. I must have gotten a gift or something. But yeah.
Well, Bonnie, thank you again for being with me. I'm Dave Henning, Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. Dave Henning, glad to be with you. Thank you, Bonnie. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. You as well.
God bless.